One of the topics of conversation you hear a lot amongst wrestling fans is who's on your Mount Rushmore of professional wrestlers. I personally find that to be an impossible list to compile. Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Ric Flair, The Rock, Stone Cold Steve Austin, CM Punk, Edge, Mick Foley, John Cena. How could anyone possibly narrow the greatest superstars in the history of the business down to just 4 people? The only thing I can guarantee is that if such a monument was being constructed, one man would be a slam dunk selection as one of the greatest performers to ever lace up a pair of wrestling boots. This man, or should I say this dead man, has dominated the world of professional wrestling for 3 decades, transcending different eras and genres to get himself over with new generations of fans, while simultaneously building up the business by helping to create other superstars along the way. He has the respect of his peers and fans alike and has earned a chance to finally rest in peace. Rick Ucchino, and the superstar under the spotlight this week is none other than the Phenom, The Undertaker. He's been heralded as the greatest character in the history of WWE, but believe it or not, he was once told by a WCW producer that no one would ever pay to watch him wrestle. Seriously? Was this the same guy who drafted Sam Bowie over Michael Jordan? Well, okay, for whatever reason, WCW did not see much value in mean Mark Callis, and in the fall of 1990, Mark Calloway made his way over to WWE and debuted as The Undertaker at Survivor Series and immediately took the wrestling world by storm. Taker was the surprise member of Ted DiBiase's $1 Million Team, and he eliminated Koko B. Ware and the American Dream Dusty Rhodes before eventually being eliminated by countout. A few months later, the Dead Man would defeat Jimmy Snuka in his WrestleMania debut, all the way back at WrestleMania 7, and then swing around to Survivor Series 1991, just a year after his debut. Taker would win his first world championship by defeating the immortal Hulk Hogan, making him at the time the youngest WWE champion in company history. Over the next few years, The Undertaker would work with the likes of Jake the Snake Roberts, the Macho Man Randy Savage, and King Kong Bundy. But it wasn't until 1996 when arguably one of his greatest rivalries began, following the WWE debut of everybody's favorite masked, mentally deranged schizophrenic, Mankind. Now, Vince McMahon was not a big believer in the man behind the mask. In fact, he had to be talked into bringing him in by good old JR. And The Undertaker did for Mankind what he has done for so many others. He made him famous. Mick Foley himself has gone on record saying that if his first program was with anyone other than The Undertaker, no one would have cared about Mankind. Now, it was also during this time frame that The Undertaker helped make a legendary match what it is today by taking part in the first few Hell in a Cell matches. The first against Shawn Michaels at Bad Blood in '97. Now, this was the same match that The Undertaker's half-brother Kane made his iconic debut alongside Taker's former manager Paul Bearer. Then in 1998 at the King of the Ring, it was the match that made Mick Foley a legend. In a match that's designed to keep 2 opponents confined within the cage until their brutal battle is over, these 2 warriors said to hell with all that and ascended up to the top of the cage to start off the matchup, and well, you know how that went. Yeah, not only did Foley actually get up from that initial fall, he climbed back up to the top of the cell just to be chokeslammed through the roof down to the ring below. Obviously, Taker won that matchup, but Foley was anointed a god afterward. Seriously, how is this man not dead? Anywho, back to The Undertaker. As the Monday Night War started to ramp up, the Attitude Era was hitting its peak. The Lord of Darkness was mixing it up with the best in the business at the time, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock, Triple H, and yes, of course, his brother Kane. But right around the turn of the millennium, the man behind the Dead Man started to feel that his demonic character was becoming a bit stale and decided to change things up a bit. The American Badass was a more modern take on The Undertaker, showing a little bit more of the man Mark Calloway than the controller of dark forces that fans were used to seeing. In the early 2000s, we saw Taker reunite with Kane, and the Brothers of Destruction spent a lengthy period of time battling for the WWE Tag Team Championships, winning the titles twice. Oh, they also won the WCW Tag Team titles during that whole invasion storyline. You know, that invasion angle that gave us that great DDP stalker storyline. It's okay, not long after that, we got Undertaker versus Maven. Yeah! Okay, I'll skip ahead. In 2002, when WWE realized their roster was so big they needed to split it up, Taker was a shock selection by Ric Flair on behalf of SmackDown. In a strictly kayfabe way, the dead man was not happy at all with the move, but over the next decade, he was a staple on the Blue brand, winning world championships and feuding with the likes of Brock Lesnar, Kurt Angle, Batista, and Eddie Guerrero. By 2009, The Undertaker was back to a version of his older dead man persona, and people started noticing something about his resume. The fact that somehow, miraculously, he was undefeated at WrestleMania. And thus, at WrestleMania 25, began a series of matches that closed out an era. After years of almost sloth-like tactical and technical precision in The Undertaker's approach, he finally got the opportunity to put on a series of 5-star, absolutely classic matches, starting with back-to-back wins over Shawn Michaels, and then following those up with 2 more bangers against Michaels' best friend, Triple H. Now, it's hard to hit one home run, let alone follow that up with 3 more. All of these matches were absolute masterpieces and are considered by many to be some of the greatest wrestling matches ever. I mean, they're no Edge and Orton, but still damn good. Anyway, the streak would remain a focus for a couple more years. Taker would defeat CM Punk at WrestleMania 29 to move to 21-0. And then, the unthinkable happened at WrestleMania 30.
Into the cover, hooks the leg, the streak is over.
Following his loss to Brock Lesnar in 2014, The Undertaker would not be seen for an entire year. His appearances in a WWE ring would become less and less frequent. He did redeem himself at WrestleMania 31 against Bray Wyatt and knocked off Brock Lesnar that following SummerSlam. In the years that followed, Taker kept finding himself back in a WWE ring sooner rather than later. WrestleMania matches against Shane McMahon, Roman Reigns, and John Cena, matches in Saudi Arabia and Australia. All the while, The Undertaker was trying to find that perfect moment to finally walk away, as chronicled in the Last Ride documentary series. And now that episode 5 is in the books, we know that the man himself has found that moment. Following the success of the Boneyard match with AJ Styles at WrestleMania 36, The Undertaker says at this point in his life, he has no desire to wrestle again. He did leave the door open though. Who knows what will happen if Vince decides to pick up that phone and has the right opportunity. However, if this is indeed the last ride, on behalf of all of us, thank you, Taker.